Hi, everybody. This is Nick Morrell with Audio Video Export. It's an absolute pleasure being with you today. We've got a little bit of mixed news, some really good news that we've got Michael Buratto with us from Klipsch, who's going to be doing our presentation on our training, and that's awesome because he's probably one of the best trainers that we've had, and we have had the pleasure of working with. The mixed news, unfortunately, is this is going to be his last week. He's going to be going to another company, but we are recording this, so we will have this in time in memoriam. And we're looking forward to that. And thanks, Michael, for again spending your last week with us and helping us out today in English and then in a couple days in Spanish, where I'll be doing it, but you'll be here in order to be able to back me up, and I appreciate that. So for those of you who are unfamiliar with the GoToWebinar system, there is a question box. Feel free to go ahead and write whatever questions it is that you've got. I will be monitoring that throughout the duration of the presentation, and we expect that we'll have a little bit of time afterwards in order to be able to go over whatever questions that you may have. You will also receive an email at the conclusion. Actually, it'll be tomorrow. You'll receive it tomorrow automatically from GoToWebinar with a link to this recording, which will be hosted on our YouTube page. So if you're unfamiliar with our YouTube page, please do go ahead and check it out. It is available to you. It is also, there's a link to it in my signature. So if you've ever gotten an email from me in my signature, you'll see a copy of that YouTube link there. Thanks again, Michael. I'm so appreciative of you and your time here, and it's all yours.
Absolutely. Thanks, Nick. Thanks for having me, everybody. Good afternoon, good morning. Let's go ahead and get started. My name is Mike Buratto. I'm a senior product manager here at Klipsch. I oversee pretty much anything that's not a headphone. So there's a lot to cover today. Audio Video Export is a great partner of ours, and they sell a lot of our products. So I want to make sure we get through pretty much everything. I want to touch on everything we do here. So let's jump into it. I'm going to start a little bit with the history of the company. And most people recognize Klipsch as the idea or the child of Paul W. Klipsch, that man right there, sort of known as this sort of mad genius, right? He was a music lover, but was at the heart a researcher and an engineer. Had a lot of careers before he got into audio. Worked in locomotives, worked in oil prospecting, worked in ballistics. All of these things have to do with mechanical vibration, right? So it's a natural segue to audio and audio reproduction. Founded the brand in 1946. This is actually our 75th anniversary. And he founded the brand with his first product that you see to his left, sorry, his right, our left, the Klipsch horn that we still make today at our factory in Hope, Arkansas. But the attitude of this brand is sort of, unapologetic, loud and proud. We want to bring that live music experience that Paul really set out to recreate with his Klipsch horn. And I'm seeing now it says 72 years of continuous production. Up at the top there, it should be 75. I mentioned Hope, Arkansas. That's where the company was founded. We currently have a manufacturing facility there that employs about 70 people. Actually, today that's closer to 85 or 90. But it's the home of our most premium products. So the Heritage line, our Klipsch horn that you saw there, that's still in production today, along with some of Paul's other original designs. All of our Pro Cinema product, our KI series, which is custom install, commercial install product. Our THX box product, which we'll talk about in a little bit, then our RF7 RC64, really our flagship floor standard and center. Now, we consider ourselves the cinema experts. We have about 50% market share in US commercial cinemas. So if you've gone to a movie theater in the US, chances are you've heard a Klipsch system. If you've gone to a movie theater outside of the US, about a 25% chance that was a Klipsch system. So all of those products, again, built at our factory in Hope, Arkansas. We are what we call ground up development partners with Dolby, with their Atmos specification, THX, and as well as IMAX. So we work with these cinema companies, or I should say these technology companies, to make sure that the cinema experience is as dynamic and as cinematic as it can be. And of course, we share the technologies from our commercial cinema line the horn loaded efficiency and dynamics, all the way down to our home theater, even into our custom install products, in-ceiling products, outdoor products as well. So you're not just hearing home speakers that happen to have the Klipsch brand on them. You're hearing those same technologies that we develop for our commercial cinema products all over the world. You're hearing those in our home products as well. Now, about those acoustic technologies, we are known first and foremost for our horn-loaded technology. And this was something that Paul, hence the name Klipsch horn, when Paul set out to design a better loudspeaker, he found that horn loading pretty much every driver brought an efficiency to the speaker, and we'll talk about some of these advantages in just a second. But really what Paul found was a better sound stage, a better frequency response, better directivity. In order to achieve that, was horn loading at least the tweeter, a lot of times the mid-range and the low frequency driving. Just makes for a better sounding speaker. If you guys have been to a large stadium or outdoor, we're based in Indianapolis, Indiana now. That's where most of our marketing, administration, engineering, we have a huge acoustic lab here in Indianapolis, but we're also home to the Indianapolis 500. And at the Indianapolis 500, or the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, as it's called, you see these massive horn-loaded speakers. And the reason for that is horn loading of a speaker allows you to make more sound with less power. And it really allows you to focus that sound at your listening area. So at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, which is a racetrack that's about 2.5 miles long, you can imagine the size of this motor speedway facility. You're trying to throw a lot of sound a long way, and you're also trying to overcome the sound of these open-wheeled race cars. So horn loaded, certainly not something that is proprietary to Klipsch in terms of the idea of horn loading a speaker, but the way we design the horn, the geometry, that is proprietary. We call that Tractrix, and we find that that is the best way to transfer these high frequency waves from the tweeter into the listening area. So I mentioned controlled directivity. Obviously, my very elementary graphic there gives you a good idea, but if you have a direct radiating or non-horn loaded speaker, you're sort of bouncing sound all over the room, right? You have close to 180 degrees of dispersion. So it's not all focused at the listener like it would be with a Tractrix horn or really any well-designed horn. Now I mentioned high efficiency and putting out a lot of sound with not a lot of power. And that's really the bottom line of what we do. You'll notice that the sensitivity specifications on Klipsch spec sheets are generally 5 to 6 dB higher than you'll see on a direct radiating speaker. That horn allows the speaker to actually play louder than the competition with the same amount of input power, which means you can buy a horn loaded speaker, buy a smaller amplifier, and get more sound. Obviously, we're never going to push our customers to use smaller amplifiers. We always love more power, more headroom, but if you want a clean sound and you're maybe on a budget, or the amplifier you have as a customer is just a little bit smaller, you're still going to get a much more dynamic, three-dimensional soundstage with a horn-loaded speaker. So why dynamic range? That kind of goes hand in hand with high efficiency, right? We can play the loudest and the softest passages of a piece of music or a movie with detail, intelligibility, and minimal distortion. And then of course, flat frequency response, reproducing the full band of whatever that source material is. And horn-loaded technology, whether it's just the horn-loaded tweeter or a fully horn-loaded system like the Klipsch horn, some of our cinema speakers, you are taking advantage of all 4 of these attributes with horn loading. Now, we talked about horn loading the tweeter, but what do we do on the woofer side to sort of keep up with that efficiency? Well, we use not only do we use massive magnet structures on our woofers, but we use a proprietary material called Serometallic. This is sort of a mix between, as you can imagine from the name, ceramic and metal, in this case, aluminum. The copper color, I don't want anybody to get confused by this. We don't actually use copper in our woofers. Copper is relatively heavy and it's very soft, so it doesn't make for a very good woofer material. The copper color is just the anodization of that aluminum in the Serometallic woofers. But using ceramic and aluminum in our woofers allows us to take advantage of the low mass of aluminum and the high rigidity of ceramic. So you kind of put those two materials together and they make for a really an optimal use case for woofers. So you get high excursion, high sensitivity with very low cone breakup. So it's very clean and very powerful. So I want to start, and I guess we'll chalk this up to the alphabet, but I want to start with architectural speakers. And our architectural speaker line has two different installation systems depending on which series you're talking about. So at the top end with the Klipsch Reference Premier Professional Series and the Klipsch Reference Professional Series, we have an installation system called Secure Fit. This is a two-piece installation. You actually install the frame into the wall and then the speaker installs onto the frame. So it actually double decouples that speaker from the installation surface. So it essentially keeps vibrations from the speaker from radiating into the wall or ceiling. So you're getting a much more pointed, much more defined soundstage and defined mid-bass with the Secure Fit installation system. Now on the entry-level lines, the Klipsch Custom Series and Designer Series, and we'll get into the details of these lines in just a minute, we use the Skyhook Cinch installation system. No acoustic benefit there at all. I want to be completely honest with you guys. There's nothing about Skyhook Cinch that makes these speakers sound better, and that's okay. But what it does do, it's actually completely tool-free, and it allows the installation to be about 75% faster than your traditional screw-in dogleg that you'd see on a more traditional in-ceiling or in-wall speaker. So Skyhook Cinch is all about speed. Secure Fit is all about better sound and reliability. So we're going to start from the top down. We're going to start with the Klipsch Reference Premier Professional Series, and you can see the nomenclature 160 RPW. That is your single 6.5-inch Reference Premier in-wall speaker. Now, the top end of the Reference or the Pro Series, the Reference Premier that you see here, does not have aimable woofers or tweeters. These are really intended more for high-end home theater installations. Obviously, if you have an in-ceiling situation where you need to aim the tweeter, we have the 180 Rpc Lcr, which is actually an angled Serometallic woofer and an angled 1-inch titanium dome tweeter. If you take a step down to the Reference Series, these are actually IMG or injection molded graphite woofers. They don't utilize that proprietary Serometallic material. It's an aluminum dome tweeter instead of a titanium dome tweeter like you see with the Reference Premier line. But you do get aimable woofers and tweeters. Obviously a little bit more versatility there. And again, you can see the nomenclature, your traditional 6.5, 8-inch, dual 5.25 in wall, and then 6.5 and 8-inch in ceiling. Now in the reference line, you'll see at the bottom, we have what we call minimal footprint, which are essentially in ceiling and in wall speakers that are just smaller cutouts, take up less space in the wall, less of an eyesore. And when I say take up less space on the wall or ceiling, the Pro 14RC, nice feature about that is that it's the same diameter as a traditional down can light. So you don't have these misalignments or inconsistencies with the look in your ceiling. The Pro 14RC and even the cutout on our bandpass subwoofer, the Pro 800SW, those are the same as a traditional down can light. So you can see there Really what we recommend with the Pro 14 RC, the minimal footprint systems, is to match up about 4 of those in-ceiling speakers with one Pro 800 SW for your full bandwidth system. Then we get to the Klipsch Designer Series. So we are now sort of in step 2 or level 2 of our 4 levels of in-ceiling and in-wall speaker category. So the Klipsch Designer Series is really entry-level material. So polypropylene woofers, silk dome tweeters, but you still have horn-loaded tweeters. You still have a good offering of LCRs, a couple stereo modules in the CSM, so single point stereo, and you still have aimable woofers and tweeters on this line on the in-ceiling. When you get down to level 1, which is the Klipsch Custom Series, you lose the horn-loaded tweeter, you lose the ability to aim the woofer and tweeter, but honestly, dollar for dollar, the CS16C is probably the best sounding speaker we make for the money. So incredible value. We sell thousands and thousands and thousands of those speakers every month. Just incredibly versatile.
We generally, under normal circumstances, have about 100 to 200 of those in stock at any given time.
Yeah.
Thanks, yeah, they
man.
rotate fairly well.
Yeah, it's good to know. High turnover of those. So this is really the star of the show, this slide right here. This really shows you as you go from good, better, best, you go from custom series all the way up the line to reference premier, what you get from an acoustic standpoint, an install standpoint. Something I also did not mention on the reference line and reference premier, the professional series, the in-ceiling models have round grills and square grills included in the box. So you or your installer or your customer can choose, what works best for their aesthetic. Obviously, no acoustic difference there. These are flat, bezel-free magnetic grills on all of the lines, but with the reference premier and reference round and square in the box. So I did mention the Pro 800 SW, which is an 8-inch bandpass dual voice coil in ceiling or in floor subwoofer, but we also have a couple sort of more traditional home theater architectural subs. So the Pro 1000 SW is a 10-inch Serometallic woofer, and the Pro 1200 is a 12-inch Serometallic woofer. Now you can see the 1000 SW is really great for retrofitting. You cut out space between studs and the wall. This screws right into the studs over the drywall. Whereas the Pro 1200 SW, you can see with its about 5 foot tall cabinet, you get a little more air volume there, so a little bit better extension and output, but it needs to be installed before the drywall is installed, so something to keep in mind there. Really, we wanted to have a solution, a subwoofer solution for every use case. So the Pro 800 SW is great for distributed audio throughout the home. If you want something more powerful, more dynamic, better extension for home theater, you have a retrofit and a new construction solution in the 1000 and the 1200 SW respectively. So taking all of those technologies and everything we know from the Klipsch home theater and architectural side, we have worked closely with THX for several years. And actually, I will send you, or I believe Nick will send you guys this presentation. I have a couple slides that I've hidden just for timing purposes, but one of those slides calls out the difference between THX Ultra and THX Select and some of the advantages of using a THX system in a high-end home theater. If you're not familiar with THX, some of the advantages there, take a look at that slide. But essentially, we have a line of in-room or box speakers that are THX certified, and we have a line of architectural speakers that are THX certified. So I'll start with the box or in-room. A lot of people use these as behind the screen systems, as you saw on this previous slide. But really, we've got two LCR offerings here. So the THX 6000 LCR, which is a dual 6.5-inch Serometallic woofer with a titanium dome compression driver in a 90 by 60 Tractrix horn that you see there. The 5000 LCR is a dual 5 1/4 inch, so a little bit less extension. It is a sealed box with the 5000 as opposed to the front ported box that you see there with the 6000. So a little bit more output, certainly more extension on the 6000, whereas the 5000 is a little bit more of a compact box. A lot of times you'll see customers using the THX 6000 as your front stage, as your LCR, the 5000 as side and rear surrounds, but they're sort of mix and match, and they're really meant to be mix and match depending on room size and budget. Now, if you are interested in wide dispersion or bipole or dipole surrounds, we have those as well in the THX 5000 SUR. Those are sold as pairs. And then, of course, the THX 1200 SW 12-inch subwoofer. That is a passive subwoofer. That actually, we would sell that with the KA1000 amplifier that you see there. And that KA1000 rack amplifier can power 2 of the THX 1200 SWs, which is generally what we would recommend in a higher end THX room. Then we have essentially architectural versions of all of those. So the THX 8000L is an 8-inch LCR in wall. The THX 8000S is essentially the same woofer, same cutout size, same design, but it does have a diffuse Tractrix horn tweeter array. So it actually has 2 tweeters built into it that are just essentially diametrically opposed to give you a much wider surround, environmental surround experience. And then the same with the in-ceiling models. The 5002L is an angled tweeter that obviously meant to be installed as a left center right up towards the front of the room. And then the THX 5002S has that same diffuse Tractrix horn tweeter array. Now you'll notice the LCR horn is sort of a strange shape. It doesn't look like most of the horns you see on our product. And that's actually a technology we call VCT, or variable coverage technology. And what it does, there's nothing electronic about it. There's no switch you need to hit to engage it. It's purely a mechanical design. But what it means is that as you get further away from the speaker, traditionally with an in-ceiling LCR, frankly any speaker, with a constant dispersion pattern, as you get towards the back of the room or further away from the speakers, the stereo image is going to become very centered. If you get really close to the speakers, the stereo image is going to be very localized, meaning you can pick out which sounds are coming from which speakers. It's distracting. It's not a great audio experience. The VCT variable coverage technology that's built into the 5002L makes sure that the dispersion is constant no matter where you're sitting in the room. So you can actually see in this bottom right, if I'm in the back of the room, I get the same sound stage that I'm getting if I were sitting in the front of the room, which is extremely powerful. So something to keep in mind there, especially for larger home theaters or larger theaters in general. You're just getting a much more consistent, much more pleasant sound stage with the VCT technology. Then, of course, I mentioned the diffuse Tractrix horn array on the 8000S and the 5002S. All of these speakers have ABS enclosures. They are fully sealed boxes, so it is a consistent experience. Something to keep in mind there. The in-ceiling models are about 13 inches deep, so we generally, they need to be spec'd in rooms that are purpose-built for them, or rooms that have obviously double joists in them, so larger than your typical 8-inch joist. So something to keep in mind there. But obviously with the ABS enclosure, makes for just a more consistent output, more consistent frequency response, since you're not reliant on the air volume of the room itself, or I should say air volume of the walls themselves. And then lastly, we have 2 in-wall models that are actually THX Select certified. So everything we've seen up till now has been THX Ultra certified. THX Select is meant for a little bit smaller room. We do have people that mix and match these systems quite a bit though. So they'll use the THX Ultra product up front. They'll use the THX Select product, so the 502L or the 504L. They will use that product in the back. And again, some of the hidden slides that are part of this presentation sort of illustrate out where some of these speakers are typically placed in your typical installation. So the difference here, these are open back. They do not have the ABS enclosures like we talked about on the THX Ultra product. These also use fiberglass woofers instead of Serometallic woofers. So a little bit different sensitivity, a little bit different voicing, but the same 90 by 90 Tractrix horns, the same 1-inch titanium dome compression drivers. Stole all my thunder talking about it beforehand, but here are the slides to talk about those acoustic properties. So I actually have completely lost my my window here to keep track of questions. So Nick, let me know if anything pops up. Feel free to ask questions in the chat throughout the presentation. If not, we will hopefully have about 5 or 10 minutes at the end to
Yeah, no
cover any
worries.
questions.
I'm monitoring the question box. So
Cool.
we're good.
Thanks, Nick. Appreciate it.
Yeah, of course.
So we have a large amount of SKUs for obviously home theater and architectural, but we want to cover outdoor as well, especially now with COVID. People are socializing more outside. People are putting more money into their outdoor entertainment spaces, outdoor lifestyles. So we do have really any type of speaker that you need for a great outdoor audio experience, landscape, rock speakers, or under eave speakers. And I'll start with the landscape speakers. The only thing you need to know here is that we make the only horn-loaded landscape speaker on the market. So all of the sensitivity, efficiency, control directivity, all of those advantages we talked about at the top of the hour, you're getting those advantages in our landscape speakers as well. So you're getting more sound and better sound with less power with our landscape speakers because they are horn loaded. We have 2 models of satellite. You have a Pro 500 LS and a Pro 650 LS. The only difference between them is the size of the multi-tap, 30-watt 70-volt multi-tap and 50-watt 70-volt multi-tap, respectively, and the size of the woofer inside them. So a 5-inch IMG woofer versus a 6.5-inch IMG woofer. Obviously, with the 650 LS, you're getting much better frequency response, or I should say low frequency extension, and you're getting much more output out of that 650 than you are out of the 500. I will mention we designed completely new Tractrix horns for these to open up the dispersion. Obviously, we talk so much about controlled directivity, but in a home theater situation or even a distributed audio situation inside, you generally know where the listener is going to be. In an outdoor situation, it's not always as predictable. So we wanted to open up the dispersion to make sure there were less gaps in that sound stage. There was consistent playback throughout the listening area. Most of our competitors, even direct radiating competitors in the landscape space, tout 60, maybe 90 degrees of dispersion. We have 105 degrees of dispersion. So you can either use less speakers and your bases are all covered, I should say. There are less gaps in the listening area like we talked about. As a Klipsch employee and someone whose salary is based on you guys buying a lot of speakers, I recommend you don't buy less speakers. I recommend you buy more speakers, put them closer to the listening area, which is also a possibility with the 105 degree or wider dispersion. You don't have to set them as far back. So put them close to the listening area, let everybody hear that dynamic, rich, detailed music that you get from a horn-loaded landscape satellite. We also have 2 burial subwoofers, the Pro 10 SWLS and the Pro 12 SWLS. These go well into the 30 hertz and 20 hertz range for -3 dB bass extension with incredible output as well, 105 dB or 109 dB max SPL. Now you can run these on a 70-volt rail. They are dual voice coil with 4 leads out from the pigtail. So depending on how you wire them, and this is all called out in the manual, you can run those dual voice coils in parallel or in series. And if you run them in series, it's a 16 ohm load. So you're actually able to put that on a 70-volt rail at about 250 watts going to each subwoofer. So you are getting the convenience and the ease of a 70-volt install, but you're not missing out on all of that low frequency extension that you typically lose in a 70-volt situation because of transformer saturation. So something,
Michael, I want to make sure that I'm understanding something that you just said, because I've never heard this before. So
Okay.
we've got 2 speakers that are 8 ohm that if we wire them in series, not parallel,
Right.
so we wire them in series. Now we've got a 16 ohm load, but you're
Right.
saying put them on a 70-volt rail? That's not,
Yeah.
but that's using the transformer.
Right. So all 70-volt is kind of a misnomer. 70-volt is just constant voltage, right?
Constant voltage, correct?
So,
yep.
So if you put when we talk about transformers in 70-volt speakers, the transformer essentially is just increasing the impedance of that speaker. So really what we should be calling it is just a high impedance rail, meaning the more speakers you daisy chain onto this rail, those need to be higher impedance speakers. So when we talk about wiring the Pro 10SW or 12SW, those dual voice coil woofers, when you wire those voice coils in series, series wiring is additive. So 2 8 ohm voice coils, you add them together, you get a 16 ohm load on the speaker. Most 70-volt speakers are between 16, 32 ohms. So the lower the ohm rating in a constant voltage system, the more power you're going to receive. So in a 16 ohm load, just from a Ohm's law, you're getting about 250 watts to each of those subwoofers. Now, the subwoofer doesn't care if it has a transformer or not. The subwoofer cares about wattage draw, and the amplifier cares about impedance, right? So the amplifier is, a 70-volt amplifier is just fine with a 16 ohm impedance. The subwoofer is just fine with its 250 watts of input. So everything's hunky-dory from an install standpoint, from an electronic standpoint, but we don't have the transformer saturation that you typically see with 70-volt subwoofers. Make sense?
It's very interesting. Yeah, I want to definitely dig more into that. I've never heard that before. So it's great info.
Yeah, it's something we've done on commercial subwoofers. We have our commercial surface mount speakers. We have an 8 ohm product. I'm sorry, an 8-inch subwoofer product that is actually a dual voice coil. And again, depending on how you wire it up or which position the switch is in on the front, you're either using both of those voice coils in series or in parallel. But really what it comes down to is we're able to achieve 70-volt, I don't want to say consistency, but 70-volt compatibility without the use of a transformer. Because once you use a transformer, everything below 100 hertz pretty much goes away because of transformer saturation.
Right, exactly, yep.
Great question, Nick. Yeah, and again, something we can dig more into at the end of the session, or I think there's a slide that sort of illustrates the process here as well. So I want to keep moving. I do want to talk about our rock speakers as well. I mentioned how we have landscape, rock, and surface mount speakers. If you look at the landscape speakers, the rocks are identical to those, just in a rock form factor. Pretty easy. Pro 10SW RK is a 10-inch transformerless dual voice coil rock subwoofer. So obviously it's a little bit bigger than the satellites, but in installation situations where you can't stake something into the ground or bury a subwoofer, These are a great sort of what we would call surface mount solution. But again, acoustically identical to everything on the landscape side. And then lastly, our surface mount speakers, AW650, AW525, so 6.5 inch and 5.25 inch two ways. The AW500SM is a 5.25 inch single point stereo, and then the AW400 is an ultra compact under each speaker. You guys are familiar with these. We've been building these for years and years. Great sounding outdoor speakers. I have AW525s at my house, and I love them, and I will never take them down. Now, that's our outdoor product. So when we talk about custom install, you know, you've got the architectural, you've got the outdoor, really all your bases are covered. But I want to talk to you guys about our Reference Premier box line as well, which Audio Video Export does a lot of business with us on these because they are high performance, high value box speakers for all of your home theater and media room applications. So this is a large slide of all of the SKUs, starting with the Rp8060FA. That's sort of the flagship. And 8060FA means 8-inch two-way, 6.5 inch up firing Atmos channel, hence the FA. So if you're in for a all-in-one floor standing Atmos speaker, that's yours. But the best-selling speaker we make is the Rp8000F, which is our standard dual 8-inch tower speaker. The Reference Premier series uses Serometallic woofers, like we talked about, sort of those flagship proprietary woofers. 1-inch titanium dome tweeters in Tractrix horns, as you see there. So in terms of nomenclature, 8000F is a dual 8-inch floor stander, 6000F dual 6.5 inch floor stander, 600M is the 6.5 inch monitor, Rp500sa is the 6.5 inch center. So obviously you're sort of catching on to how this works. Not only do we have the 8060FA floor stander where the up-firing Atmos channel is built in, but you'll notice in the bottom right corner, the Rp500sa Surround. Now this is a pair of up-firing Atmos speakers that have a 5.25 inch woofer with a 1-inch tweeter in them, but there's actually a switch on the back that you can switch, and it will change the network or change the response of that speaker, so it can be used as a wall-mounted monopole surround. So lots of flexibility there, really intended, really built to be an up-firing Atmos speaker, but can also be used as a wall-mounted surround speaker. So again, the flexibility there is unparalleled with what else is on the market. About 90% of the models we sell are ebony, about 10% walnut, but obviously anybody with a little bit of a taste for sort of mid-century design is going to go for that walnut vinyl. It's a beautiful piece. It's what I have in my house. Here's just a little bit more detail on each of these models that we just talked about. So 3 monitors, the 600M, 500M, and 400M. Something to keep in mind, the 4-inch models, sort of the smaller entry-level models in the Reference Premier line, are only available in black. So keep that in mind when specifying out these types of products. But the Reference Premier line, again, our best-selling line, it's really the pinnacle of value to performance. I have Reference Premier all throughout my house, and I love it. It's really the embodiment of the Klipsch sound for sort of the modern user, the modern home in terms of design, but also from an acoustic standpoint. It's a much more balanced sound than I think a lot of horn-loaded speakers bring to the table. So it really gives you the advantages of the the dynamics, the efficiency, the directivity, and the output of a horn-loaded speaker without sort of the harshness that I think a lot of people associate with horn-loaded speakers. Getting into subwoofers, we have on the entry level the R8SW, which is an 8-inch down-firing sub. Pretty basic, great for custom install options, great for entry-level Somebody doesn't want a huge subwoofer in a room. They want it, tucked behind a chair, tucked in a corner. The R8SW is a great solution for that. But the SPL series is really our custom, or I should say custom, core subwoofer line. So similar to how the Reference Premier line is sort of our core box speaker line, the SPL subwoofers line up nicely with those. These use long throw Serometallic woofers with Santoprene surrounds. SPL 100 is a 10-inch, 120 is a 12-inch, 150 is a 15-inch. So the SPL 150, 800 watt peak amplifier, goes down pretty close to 20 hertz. I believe the extension on that is close to 18 or 19 hertz. For under, I think, $1,500 at retail, there's no better value in subwoofers on the market today. So the SPL line is really meant to bring sort of the performance and value that you see on the Reference Premier line to the subwoofer space. Now, the WA2 wireless kit can be added to any of those SPL products for high-res wireless transmission. The subwoofer has a port on the back of it that will power and receive signal from that receiver. And obviously there's a transmitter that connects just via RCA to the subwoofer output on your AVR processor. Less than 5 milliseconds of latency, so the difference in timing is undetectable by human ears. Obviously retaining that phase coherency, so you're not really losing out on any performance with this high-res transmitter. Now, I know we just talked about a lot, but I want to leave time for questions. Before we get to questions, I do want to mention, if you go to prosystemdesign.klipsch.com, you can create a login account, and you can actually send us drawings of jobs that you're working on. What I mean by that is, send us those drawings, send us budget information. If it's an in-ceiling distributed audio job, if it's a home cinema you're trying to design, any information you have. And actually on the website, there's a questionnaire. So hopefully we can get all of that information from you within about 48 hours. Our system engineers here on staff, for free, will send you back a design of what products you should be using, where you should be placing those products. If you need help with electronics, these guys are pretty much geniuses when it comes to system design. It's all they do. They will help you out with electronics. They will help you with wiring. Trey Cannon heads up that team. Stan Stivers is another manager on that team. But very smart guys. They come from the install world. They come from the pro audio world. So they know what they're talking about. prosystemdesign.klipsch.com. It's completely free, completely easy to use, and I want to say completely 48-hour turnaround. If it's going to be more than that, they will let you know, but generally they'll get plans back to you in a day or two. So please, please use this service. Those guys are incredibly smart, and they'll also send you a beautiful one sheet that's a PDF that shows a layout of each of the speakers in the design or in the drawings that you sent. We're happy to put your logo on it as an integrator, as a customer, so you can take the credit for all the work. We don't care who gets the credit. We just want you selling really great sounding Klipsch systems, and we want to make your life as easy as possible. So that said, questions, concerns, anything I missed? Again, this is going to be distributed to you guys, I'm sure, and there were some hidden slides in here that just wanted to make sure we had time for questions, time for any comments. So there's a little bit more information included in the published version beyond what I covered today. But questions, concerns, thoughts?
I appreciate that, Mike, a lot. I've taken care of most of the questions, but if there are any others,
cool.
Feel free to go ahead and fill those out.